Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video I wanted to share with you guys something interesting which has popped up and come across my radar, and that is why everyone in the endgame is starting to build Yanqing and invest into him, and why he's seeing so much success in the later floors of Memory of Chaos, where previously he's kind of not been on too many people's radars. If you were someone who pointed it out, great for you, but at least for me, he wasn't on my radar. So first and foremost, we have to cover why Yanqing kind of was a little bit overlooked by some people, myself included, and then now why he is actually kind of bringing out the big guns and seeing so much use. So first and foremost, the only reason why I think Yanqing, at least for me at least, has kind of been a little bit, I don't know about him, is actually going to be his talent here, one with the sword. It is basically a self buff which gives him the majority of his damage as well as a big, kind of addition to his rotation. So whenever he uses his skill, he's going to gain Soul Steel Sync, and then he's also going to get massive crit damage, and also a chance to perform a follow-up attack which deals damage but also generates energy, and in addition to that, it also has a chance to freeze. Now, overall, if you're basically not maintaining this, like 80% of a fight, Yanqing is going to basically be pretty bad. He doesn't do a whole lot of damage without this, and in addition to that, he's not going to have access to his utility freeze, and his ultimate is going to be really out of reach. The reason that he's able to access his ultimate, which is very expensive, 140 energy, is actually because he is able to gain energy from that follow-up attack. So the trick is though with Yanqing is that you can maintain this buff indefinitely, just by spamming the skill. But if he is hit, he loses it. And if he is hit, then you're gonna lose all your damage. But there is a way around this. You can shield Yanqing, and that's what people do. They use stuff like March 7th, Trailers of Fire, but more importantly, and the one which a lot of people are really having a lot of success with, and myself included, is Japad. If you use him with Japad, it is like the god combo, at least from what we can see and what I've played with so far. It is so easy to maintain this. In my full Memory of Chaos 6 attempt, which you're going to probably see in the background here as we are talking, didn't get hit once outside of a massive AoE which literally took a full Japad shield off the entire team. So it is pretty easy to protect him if you own Japad, and if your Japad has some pretty good gear and you're using the ultimate at an appropriate time. So the downside of Yanqing has pretty much been mitigated with the addition of another unit which is really strong. In addition to that, another thing which I think I didn't consider and a lot of other people didn't consider as well is actually that Yanqing is a hunt character, and hunt characters actually don't have a very high chance to be hit. They have less of a chance to be hit than every other kind of character. In addition to that, Yanqing, as well as that, is generally going to be paired with Japad, and preservation characters have a higher chance to be hit. In addition to that, preservation characters can also use light cones, which increase their chance to be hit as well. A good example of this is Japad's signature, which basically says, increase a chance to be attacked by enemies. That's going to further skew it in the direction of, making sure that Yanqing does not get hit. All right, so the only things which are probably going to hit Yanqing are massive AoE attacks. If you have Japad, the only thing that will hit him then is massive AoE attacks that literally break through Japad's shield. And those are definitely present, they definitely exist, but that's just going to be a case of either removing buffs from the enemy so they don't have as much damage to hit you with, or getting more gear on your Japad. That's kind of what it comes down to. So overall, Yanqing's weakness has been mitigated, and I think a lot of us didn't really expect it to be so easily mitigatable, at least for me. Yeah, he's definitely very strong. So let's get into why he's actually seeing a lot of use though. So Yanqing is a bit unique because he has a lot of really interesting things in his kit. So I just kind of want to go on and show you guys kind of the wall that people hit. And if you're not like mega invested in your account, like, if you don't have Eidolons on the standard characters, you don't have like E6 CLA and, superimposition vibe in the night and stuff like that. Generally, if you're Trailblaze level 40 to 50, the wall you're going to hit is around Chaos Memory 6. There is just a lot of damage going out, and there is a big damage requirement to even clear it at all. And that was the wall. Now, the first side, you can pretty much complete no problems with CLA. You can kind of blow through that. It's not too much of an issue. You can get there, generally within 20 cycles, so half of the fight, you can kind of get done with CLA as well as her teams. But when you get to the second side, there's just not really too many good options, especially if you're kind of on the free-to-play side things. You've kind of got Serval, and that's pretty much the kind of best unit for it. Serval is kind of like the go-to for that. If I try to show you guys what the weaknesses are, you might kind of understand a little bit more. You'll see down here that the weaknesses are basically lightning, imaginary, and ice. And, unless you have Welt, it's pretty much going to be Serval. And like, there's not really anyone else. Now, these robots actually pop up quite a few times throughout the Memory of Chaos. In addition to that, there's also fire elementals and all sorts of other stuff which is just weak to ice. Now, Yanqing isn't just being used in 6, he's basically being used in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and he's like the main carry. It's like Sele on one side and Yanqing on the other side, and that's what we're really seeing like overall. And let's get a little bit into the reason why that is a little bit more here. I just want to kind of show you guys so it really hits home. So this is one team here. This is a user in the Discord server. You can check out all these teams over in my Discord server if you join. There's basically memory of chaos teams for every single one. We've pretty much got over 100 teams now for a lot of the different memory of chaos stages, so if you're interested in that, you can check it out. Yanqing over here is being used on the ice side, of course, and then this is Jodox here. I know for a fact that this is Jodox's account, and this Yanqing here is E0 with bad gear, and he was able to clear it as well with Yanqing. So that's pretty impressive in my opinion. Yanqing definitely pulls out of the stops, but you'll notice that both of these have Japad in them, and I think that really is the thing that makes Yanqing strong. I don't think I've actually seen an endgame memory of chaos team with Yanqing in it without Japad yet. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying that, you know, those guys are really good together. Very strong. All right, let's delve a little bit more into Yanqing though and really understand more about why he's so good. All right, so Yanqing is not only gonna have, you know, like pretty good damage, he's gonna have even better damage than normal against ice type enemies. So this thing here, icing on the kick, when Yanqing attacks, deal additional ice damage equal to 30% of his attack. So this is a bit unique because it's kind of a little bit deceptive how it's worded. It's actually not 30% increased damage. That's not what it is. It's 30% extra base damage. And if you take a look at his abilities here, you'll notice that you have a base damage amount here. So it's 280 and this one here is 165. It's adding 30% onto this base damage here, which is actually very important to note. And if you actually take a look at his passive here, going against an ice type enemy, when you're using the passive here, the talent, it deals 35% of his attack to the enemy. Now, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe you guys can analyze my footage in the background here. I didn't check before this video, but I'm pretty sure that this passive actually applies to his talent as well. So in that case, it would actually be doubling the damage of his talent, adding a good chunk to his skill, and adding a pretty good chunk to his ultimate as well. So overall, this passive is actually pretty damn good. It also scales very well with supports as well as gear because it's base damage. This is actually what gets multiplied by everything else. Now, what's pretty interesting about this is that Yanqing was competitive with characters like Sele as well as Danhang and all sorts of stuff like that, but that was without factoring in this icing on the kick. Because all the simulations done on current English websites like Pridewin are done on neutral enemies, this is not included. So Yanqing is actually likely doing a lot more damage than a lot of us kind of give him credit for if the enemy is weak to ice. Which is pretty interesting there. Okay, so that's pretty good. What else about Yanqing? Well, the cool thing about Yanqing is, like, a lot of other supports have this as well, but Yanqing synergizes particularly well with the current supports in the game. So the first one I want to talk about here is Tingyun. So Tingyun obviously gives him a ton of stats, which is great, but also accelerates his ultimate timing. Now, one of Yanqing's biggest issues is that most of his damage comes right after his ultimate or in the ultimate. That's like most of his damage. If you read his ultimate here, it says that whenever he uses it, he's going to get 60% crit as well as 40% crit multi for the turn that you're using the ultimate as well as the next turn. Now, Yanqing's rotation is generally 4 attacks, and you know that's a pretty long rotation, but with Tingyun you can compress that rotation down to 3 attacks, and what that allows you to do is have a much higher percentage uptime for his ultimate and that buff. You go from having it from 25% of your skills to 33% of your skills, which is a big damage increase. So he actually is a bit interesting in terms of how he scales with Tingyun. Now, it's worth noting that Sele also scales in the exact same way. She gets more buffed states, but you know, when you actually compare him to other damaging characters which aren't Sele, you know, like Serval, as well as other damages like Hook, you know, Yanqing just scales a bit better with supports. That's what I'm getting at here. In addition to that, Tingyun's blessing also applies on hit effects, which whenever you hit with an attack or an individual action or proc, she applies the blessing effect, which is a small lightning damage hit, which is 30%. And the cool thing about Yanqing is when he does proc his talent, which is the follow-up attack, which deals extra damage, that actually is going to proc the blessing as well. So his skill procs it and his talent procs it. So he's going to be double procking the blessing of Tingyun, meaning he scales better with Tingyun as well. So he definitely has some pretty interesting interactions with the current support line. In addition to that, Yanqing basically has capped crit pretty much out of the box for the most part. All you need is 20% crit and his ultimate will be 100% crit chance as well as the attack after it. And that synergizes very well with Bronya's ultimate, which gives you crit damage multiplier as well as attack, which is pretty damn good as well. So Yanqing definitely has synergy there as well. And then lastly, he actually has a pretty damn good synergy with Pela as well if you have her Eidolons. So if you take a look at E4, when you use Pela's skill, you actually reduce the enemy's ice resistance by 12%, which is 12% more damage for Yanqing as well. And it lasts 2 turns. So if you're using Pela and you're even just, you know, kind of using her to debuff or, you know, kind of rip off buffs off the enemy, you're just going to be passively applying a big damage boost for Yanqing as well. So overall, he just synergizes very well with a lot of the supporting can cast right now as well. So Yanqing definitely has that going for him. Now, the next point I want to bring to you guys' attention is actually the reason that he is so good right now. Now, I do think that Yanqing is going to fall off a little bit, especially when Jin Yuan comes out. He's not as good as Sele. He doesn't have as much utility. He is hard single target, which is probably his biggest flaw, but he does have a bit of a niche right now. So these are my calcs right now. You guys can see that this has basically got the full rotations of all the characters over 8 turns. You know, it's pretty in-depth here. It's pretty detailed. But what I want to show you guys is what happens when you take away substats from characters. So right now, characters' gears are pretty bad. Overall, they don't have a lot of like high levels on the gear or anything, and the substats are kind of like maybe. You maybe have some. So what I wanted to show you guys is this number here. This is E0. Take a look at what happens to Yanqing's damage compared to Sele's when I take away their substats. So if I take away Yanqing's substats, it goes down to 197. If I take away Sele's substats, she used to be ahead, but if I take away her substats, she goes down to 183. So she actually falls behind Yanqing. And then Yanqing also has the 30% extra ice damage, and overall that is going to mean that he actually does pretty damn respectable good single target damage. Now it's worth noting that obviously Sele, she has resurgence. She is still going to be way better even if she does a little bit less damage. I'm not saying Yanqing is better. Sele is way in front of Yanqing in pretty much every way in terms of damage and clearing. I wanted to point out though that his damage is actually a lot better than you might give it credit for early on in the game. So if you're pushing Memory of Chaos and you're like, I really need some more juice, need some more single target, these enemies are weak to ice, Yanqing can actually be a reasonable choice. Now the next thing I want to get into is actually breaking. So Yanqing is actually a bit interesting because he's actually one of the best breakers in the game in terms of how much he does to the break bar. Now the reason for this is because of his follow-up attack once again. So if you actually take a look at all of the break here, there's some kind of just like some crazy stuff which I did here. Over an 8-turn rotation, Yanqing actually breaks 40 break units of break bar. So to give you guys a bit of perspective, that's like way more than a lot of other characters. So in a single target fight, Himiko is actually only going to break 27, which obviously is not that many. And Su Shang of all people breaks 44 in a full rotation over 8 turns. So Yanqing, he's up there, man. He's up there in terms of how many break units he is doing. Now, this break unit stuff isn't an exact science. Don't go ahead and quote all this all around the internet, but he's definitely got a lot of break. And I just decided to kind of math it out real quick. And he does some pretty damn good single target breaking. And it's also the ice variety, which is what I want to get into next. So right now, one of the biggest issues in Endgame is dealing with the overwhelmingly high amount of damage that enemies deal to you. When enemies are 20 levels higher than you, they absolutely hit you like a truck. And the biggest challenge is just surviving. And of course, damage after that, but surviving. If you can survive, that is a big first step. And Yanqing actually provides defense as well as overwhelming offense because he is a defensive typing, which normally I would have thought would have been bad, honestly. But you know, because he brings so much damage anyway, he is just like really, but the defensive typing actually can save your behind pretty often actually. The fact that he is able to break for ice really cripples the enemy and means that you get a lot more actions compared to them, and you can really slow down their pace and make it so that they're not going to be trucking your entire team every single turn. In addition to that, he also has a really big bonus here, which is his ability to freeze outside of the break bar as well. So even if the enemy is neutral, you can go ahead and get lucky and get a freeze on them as well to super duper mitigate a ton of damage in a fight. Now the reason this is important is because Yanqing is actually chance based. So people might not realize this, but you can get into Memory of Chaos and pretty much do the same fight and it'll play out pretty much the exact same way. If you're not using any RNG units, it'll play out pretty much the same way every single time, with the exception of enemies hitting different allies and stuff like that, or if you're using RNG. Now this can be good, but it can also be bad because if you don't have the opportunity to get lucky, your runs are just basically going to always end the same, and you're not going to really get any chance to get lucky. Now Yanqing is a character similar to QQ, who is the quantum, mahjong player, who has a chance for you to get lucky as well as unlucky, but he gives you a chance to get lucky, and that lucky can give you some pretty spectacular results. It's entirely possible that you can just perma-freeze an enemy with Yanqing. It's just like, wow, he just keeps getting frozen. That's crazy. And that is actually pretty valuable in Memory of Chaos, especially if you're a player who wants to sit down and, do 1 or 2 hours of attempts. The chances are that Yanqing is going to just get lucky eventually, and that's going to lead to you clearing the stage or, getting multiple stars where you normally otherwise wouldn't. And that's definitely very valuable as well, in my opinion. So overall, Yanqing, well, he's a bit of a doozy. I was not expecting him to actually pull out the stops. I was not expecting him to be so good. And he's kind of a bit interesting because he does good damage, but he's also defensive typing. And he also has quite a lot of tricks up his sleeves with supports. Now, long term, will Yanqing be super duper relevant? Well, I can't really say. I can't see the future. But in terms of damage dealing, there's not really any any ice contenders on the horizon, so I think he's actually not too bad. If you have a Shielder or Japad, well, I think he's actually not too bad to level up. And he seems to be the difference between people clearing the high memory of chaos stages and not right now. So while I might be been a little bit harsh on Yanqing in the past, I figured I'd give you guys a bit of an update on how people are using him, why they're using him, and why they are kind of thinking he's so good now. So if you guys enjoyed this little bit of an update on Yanqing, you'd like to see some other characters who are doing particularly well in Memory of Chaos and why, definitely subscribe to the channel and like the video. And if you've noticed anything else interesting in high Memory of Chaos flaws, or even in your gameplay at all, definitely post down below. I'd love to hear about it because I'm always looking for new tech, and I always want to be at the cutting edge of the theory crafting if possible, even if that means I'm a little bit wrong. So until next time, hope you guys have enjoyed. Cheers.